The humans had always been underestimated. Across the galaxy, stories about Earth were filled with amusement. Other civilizations laughed at how primitive humans were, how fragile their technology seemed, and how slow their fleets moved compared to the advanced starships of the alien worlds. Humans were seen as curious but harmless creatures, more interested in surviving than conquering. Even when scouts reported signs of human progress, most alien councils dismissed it as exaggeration. Earth will never pose a real threat. They said, they are just a backwater species, tinkering in their small corner of the galaxy. But humans had patience. They had always relied on patience to survive. Every hardship they had faced on their home planet, wars, famine, disease, natural disasters, had taught them to plan carefully, to wait for the right moment, and then strike with precision. In secret, humans were building something that no one expected. While other species boasted about the size of their fleets or the power of their weapons, humans worked quietly, steadily, and with incredible focus. They designed ships that were fast, powerful, and adaptable, able to face any threat in the galaxy. Each ship carried the knowledge of thousands of years, not just in technology, but in human determination. The human fleet was growing, not in a flashy way that attracted attention, but in a way that mattered. Every ship that left Earth's dry docks was another step toward proving the galaxy wrong. Engineers worked day and night, running calculations, testing engines, and perfecting weapon systems that could adapt in real time during battles. Humans did not build weapons to impress. They built them to win, and every victory would be decisive. On the surface, life seemed ordinary. People walked streets, children played in parks, and cities thrived under the warmth of sunlight and the hum of energy grids. But in orbit above, massive starships glinted under the sun. Ships moved through space quietly, invisible to most sensors, but ready for the moment they were called into action. The humans were not in a rush. They never had been. They understood the value of waiting until the time was right. Every alien species had grown arrogant, believing that humans would never dare challenge them. That arrogance would be their undoing. The story begins with one of Earth's hidden bases, tucked away in the asteroid belt far from prying eyes. Here, a group of humans worked on one of the largest ships the world had ever seen. It was a marvel of design, built not just for war, but for endurance. Its hull could withstand bombardments from advanced alien lasers, and its engines could outmaneuver any pursuing fleet. Inside, crew members moved like a well-oiled machine, checking systems, calibrating weapons, and running simulations. Each human knew their role, and each human understood the importance of what they were building. This ship was not just a machine, it was a symbol of everything humans had ever survived and achieved. Across the galaxy, other civilizations continued their daily routines, unaware of the storm that was quietly gathering. Trade routes, diplomatic meetings, and planetary defenses were all maintained with the assumption that Earth would remain harmless. Some alien leaders received intelligence, reports suggesting humans were advancing faster than expected, but those reports were often ignored or ridiculed. Humans are unpredictable, one officer had said, but unpredictable doesn't mean dangerous. They did not understand that unpredictability was humanity's greatest strength. Humans thrived where logic failed, where probability seemed against them, and where others hesitated. Back on Earth, humans were not just preparing ships, they were preparing minds. Training was intense. Soldiers were not just taught to fight. They were taught to think, adapt, and act independently. Leaders were trained to make decisions in moments of chaos. Engineers were trained to repair systems under fire. Every human who served in the fleet understood one thing clearly. Survival depended on their ability to outthink the enemy. Strength alone was never enough. In the quiet corridors of the ships, conversations were filled with strategy, stories of past challenges, and lessons learned from mistakes. These moments were just as important as the battles themselves. They built trust, confidence, and an unshakable will. Despite the seriousness of their mission, humans had a sense of humor that kept morale high. In mess halls, crews joked about alien intelligence reports, mocking the absurd predictions that humans would never amount to anything. They think our engines are slow? Wait until they see us move. One young pilot laughed, tapping a holographic display that simulated evasive maneuvers. Others joined in, sharing tales of Earth's history, where humans had faced overwhelming odds and still prevailed. These stories reminded them that humanity had survived countless challenges before and would survive whatever the galaxy could throw at them. Meanwhile, scouts and spies moved quietly across alien space, gathering intelligence and monitoring fleets. Humans knew the importance of information. They studied alien tactics, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. Unlike other species, humans did not rely solely on raw firepower. They relied on observation, analysis, and adaptation. A fleet might be bigger, a weapon might be stronger, but humans understood how to use strategy to turn disadvantage into advantage. Every piece of knowledge was stored, every calculation recorded, and every prediction tested against simulations. And so, humans waited. Patience was not weakness, it was preparation. Every day brought them closer to the moment when the galaxy would finally notice their strength. They waited for the day when their fleet, which had grown silently and invisibly, would rise and reveal what the galaxy had always feared but never believed possible. There was no rush, no unnecessary risk. The humans knew that timing was everything. A premature strike could fail, but a strike at the perfect moment would be unforgettable. The quiet tension in the fleet was almost tangible. Humans walked the decks, checked systems, and ran drills. Every human, from captain to engineer, knew that their work would soon be tested. And deep down, they understood that the galaxy had never truly seen humans before. Other civilizations had seen fragments, small victories, or minor conflicts, but they had never faced the full scope of human resilience and ingenuity. One night, as Earth rotated silently below, a group of fleet commanders gathered in the control room of the largest ship. Holographic stars reflected off their eyes as they studied a map of nearby systems. "They think we are weak," said one commander, her voice calm but firm. "They think we will never challenge them. Soon, they will see the truth." The others nodded, knowing that their moment was coming. They had trained for years, built the fleet for decades, and waited patiently for this opportunity. Every calculation, every strategy, every ship was ready. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. The galaxy seemed peaceful, unaware of the storm that lurked quietly, waiting for the perfect time. Humans had always understood the value of patience. They had always known that underestimation could be a weapon, and they had used it to their advantage. While others boasted and bragged, humans prepared. While others argued over dominance, humans built, trained, and calculated. And soon, the galaxy would see that humanity was not just another species. It was a force that had been waiting patiently, growing quietly, and preparing to rise. The first part of the story ends with the fleet fully prepared, ready to leave its hiding places and step into the wider galaxy. Humanity was no longer underestimated, not by design, but by choice. They had cultivated patience, strength, and intelligence, and the galaxy was unaware that the humans they had laughed at were about to change everything. It was the calm before, a storm that no one could predict, a rise that had been decades in the making. The galaxy had no idea what it was about to face. The day humanity decided to make its presence known came without warning. No grand declaration, No formal threat only, a sudden decisive strike that shook the galaxy to its core. Humans had grown quietly, patiently, and now it was time to show what patience had created. For decades, they had prepared for this moment, building ships, training crews, and studying the movements of other civilizations. They had waited until the moment was perfect, when every calculation, every strategy, every crew member was ready. The galaxy, which had laughed at their progress, was about to realize the depth of human determination. It began at the edge of a trading system that had long been considered safe. Alien merchants and military patrols moved about their daily routines, unaware that human scouts had been monitoring them for months. The humans had studied their patterns, learning every weakness, every predictable behavior. When the fleet arrived, it did so like a shadow, silent and unannounced. Sensors blinked as human ships appeared suddenly, faster than any alien system could track. Within minutes, communication channels were flooded with confused signals. Aliens scrambled, trying to understand what was happening, but their fleets were slow, their reactions delayed. The humans had struck not with overwhelming numbers, but with precision and timing. The first attack was calculated. The humans did not simply fire blindly. They targeted key installations, disabling defenses and cutting off escape routes. Communication. Hubs were silenced, weapons depots neutralized, and supply stations disabled. It was not chaos for its own sake. It was strategy. Every human ship moved in harmony, anticipating the reactions of their opponents before they even happened. Alien. Commanders watched in disbelief as their well-defended outposts fell with astonishing speed. It was a display of coordination they had never seen before. They had expected a primitive species, maybe even a minor nuisance. They had not expected efficiency, intelligence, and courage combined in such a deadly way. As the attack continued, humans showed their ability to adapt instantly. When a patrol fleet attempted to intercept them, the humans did not retreat. They did not panic. Instead, they analyzed the movement patterns of the enemy, predicted their strategy, and countered it in real time. Ships split and regrouped, creating confusion and exploiting gaps in the alien formations. Laser beams and plasma cannons clashed in brilliant flashes, but humans always stayed one step ahead. The aliens, despite their advanced technology and years of experience, were struggling to keep up. Across the galaxy, news of the attack spread quickly. For the first time, whispers of Earth were no longer filled with amusement. They were filled with fear. Messages that had once joked about human simplicity now carried alarm. Councils that had dismissed intelligence reports as exaggeration were forced to acknowledge the truth. "They have been preparing," one officer said, shaking his head. "We underestimated them for too long." Fear was spreading faster than any weapon could fire, and that fear was only growing. Back in the human fleet, crews worked with calm efficiency. There was no panic, no unnecessary excitement. They had trained for this moment. They had faced simulations that predicted countless scenarios, and they had prepared for every possibility. Pilots communicated with precision. Engineers repaired minor damages without hesitation, and leaders coordinated every movement with clear authority. It was not brute strength alone that made them dangerous. It was discipline, intelligence, and the will to act decisively. The aliens tried to regroup. Reinforcements were called in from nearby systems, and entire fleets were mobilized to respond. But the humans anticipated these movements as well. They had studied trade routes, fleet movements, and even political tendencies to predict how alien leaders would react. Each strike was designed not just to destroy, but to manipulate the enemy, to force them into decisions that would further advantage the humans. It was psychological warfare as much as it was physical combat. Alien commanders realized too late that they were facing a species that thought several steps ahead. One particularly bold human maneuver caught an entire alien squadron off guard. The squadron had assumed that humans would attack in a straightforward formation, but instead, human ships split into multiple groups, surrounding the alien fleet from unexpected angles. It was a trap that no alien commander had predicted. By the time they understood what was happening, their ships were already trapped and overwhelmed. The humans had lost only a few minor ships, while the aliens faced catastrophic losses. Reports of the destruction spread quickly, and fear turned into awe. For the first time, the galaxy began to see humans not as insignificant, but as formidable. The attack was not about revenge or conquest. It was about proving a point. Humans wanted the galaxy to understand that underestimation was dangerous. They wanted to show that patience, intelligence, and courage could overcome even the most advanced technology. And in every move, humans demonstrated that they were capable of learning and adapting faster than anyone had imagined. Alien observers recorded the events with disbelief. How can they move so fast, yet remain coordinated? One asked. How can they anticipate every action we take? Another simply shook his head. They are nothing like us, he muttered, almost afraid to finish the sentence. Despite the chaos of battle, humans also showed mercy when it served their purpose. Ships carrying civilians or non-combatants were left untouched, allowing aliens to witness that humans were not mindless. Destroyers. They fought to demonstrate power, not to provoke hatred unnecessarily. This balance of strength and reason confused the enemy further. The aliens had expected either weakness or brutality. Humans offered neither. They were efficient, precise, and intelligent qualities that the galaxy had not associated with Earth. Because the human fleet withdrew after the initial strike, the galaxy was left in shock. Reports of the attack were sent to councils, fleets, and colonies far and wide. Humans had not only struck successfully, they had done so in a way that challenged the assumptions of every civilization. Leaders who had once ignored warnings now debated frantically about how to respond. The idea that Earth could threaten the galaxy seemed impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. Entire alien systems began to question their previous strategies, realizing that underestimating humans had been a fatal mistake. On the human side, there was quiet satisfaction, but no arrogance. Crew members cleaned weapons, repaired minor damages, and debriefed each other. They knew this was only the beginning. They had demonstrated their power, but there was much work to be done. Every human understood that the galaxy would now be watching closely, and that the next moves would require even greater precision. Still, morale was high. For the first time, humans had proven their strength on a galactic stage, and the pride was palpable. In the aftermath, humans analyzed every detail of the attack. Lessons were learned, improvements were noted, and strategies were refined. They had faced no major setbacks, but they knew that complacency could be dangerous. The galaxy would adapt, and humans would need to be ready. This dedication to continuous improvement was a hallmark of humanity's rise. Every victory was celebrated, but every victory also became a lesson for the next challenge. Meanwhile, alien species began to spread stories of the human strike, tales that were half disbelief and half fear. They spoke of humans who could move with lightning speed, anticipate every action, and fight with relentless intelligence. These stories, exaggerated or not, reached every corner of the galaxy, planting seeds of fear and respect. Humans were no longer a distant curiosity. They were a real threat, one that others could not ignore. Even as fear spread, humans remained grounded. Leaders emphasized that the strike was not the end, but a warning. They reminded crews that true strength lay not in destruction alone, but in preparedness, intelligence, and unity. The humans had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, but they had also shown that they were organized, disciplined, and controlled. It was a message that would resonate far beyond the battlefield. By the end of the first strike, one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer underestimated. They had shown the galaxy that they were patient, intelligent, and capable of precise, deadly action. Alien civilizations had glimpsed the full potential of human strategy and adaptability, and the realization was terrifying. The humans had risen quietly, and now the galaxy was forced to take notice. And as the human fleet returned to hidden bases to prepare for the next phase, the crews knew that this was only the beginning. The first strike had been a demonstration of power and precision, but the humans were ready to continue, to grow, and to rise higher than anyone had imagined. The galaxy had seen what humans could do in a single battle, and the fear and respect that spread would shape every encounter. From that moment forward, humanity had begun its ascent, and nothing in the galaxy would ever see them the same way again. After the first human strike, the galaxy was in shock. Alien leaders who had once ignored reports of human advancement were forced to reconsider their assumptions. No longer could they dismiss Earth as a primitive world. For the first time, humans had shown that they could plan, execute, and adapt faster than any species had imagined. Entire fleets had been neutralized, key outposts destroyed, and critical systems disabled, all with a precision that seemed almost impossible. The humans had acted decisively, but not recklessly, leaving the galaxy to wonder what they would do next. In the days following the strike, alien councils held emergency meetings. Messages were sent to colonies, fleets were mobilized, and strategies were discussed in frenzied sessions. Some leaders argued for immediate retaliation, believing that striking humans before they grew stronger was the only option. Others suggested caution, recognizing that humans were not mindless aggressors. They were clever, adaptable, and dangerous. The debates were heated. For centuries, the galaxy had believed it understood how power worked. Now they realized that humans operated on a level no one had predicted. Despite the panic, some alien worlds hesitated. They had trade agreements with Earth, cultural exchanges, or peaceful relations that they did not want to jeopardize. But fear was spreading, and the human sudden strike had set a precedent. Those who delayed action found themselves watching other worlds crumble under the rising might of humanity. The question was no longer whether humans could be ignored. It was how every civilization would survive in a galaxy where humans were now an undeniable force. Within human command centers, there was no celebration over the fear they inspired. Humans were focused on observation, learning, and preparation. They studied the reactions of alien fleets, analyzing every movement, every message, and every decision. This intelligence gathering was as important as their fleet itself. Humans knew that understanding the enemy was more powerful than destroying it. By observing the galaxy's response, they could plan their next moves, predict alliances, and identify weaknesses in defenses. Every detail mattered. The human strategy went beyond simple military victories. They had anticipated that fear alone could achieve what direct combat sometimes could not. News of the first strike spread quickly, carried not only by messages and signals, but by stories and rumors. Tales of human speed, intelligence, and efficiency traveled faster than any fleet. Entire systems, even those untouched by the attack, began preparing for a species they had never considered a real threat. Humans had managed to turn their initial strike into a psychological advantage, reshaping the way the galaxy thought about Earth. In some alien civilizations, fear turned to respect. Leaders who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant began to study Earth's history, technology, and tactics. They realized that humans had survived challenges that no other species could endure. On their home planet, humans had faced wars, famine, and natural disasters, often against overwhelming odds. They had endured, adapted, and thrived. This resilience, combined with intelligence and courage, made them unpredictable, and unpredictability was terrifying to a galaxy accustomed to rigid hierarchies and predictable behavior. Alien officers debated strategies with unease. "We cannot treat humans like any other species," one commander admitted. "They do not follow patterns like the rest of us. They anticipate, adapt, and act independently. Our usual tactics will fail." Others agreed, realizing that the humans' ability to learn quickly and improvise in the middle of battle made them uniquely dangerous. It was no longer a question of power alone. It was a question of understanding a species unlike any they had faced before. Meanwhile, humans continued to expand their influence subtly. Scouts moved through neutral space, monitoring alien fleets and communications. Every detail was recorded, every behavior noted. Humans understood the value of information, knowing that it could be used to avoid unnecessary conflict, negotiate from a position of strength, or exploit opportunities when they arose. While the galaxy panicked, humans were calm, confident, and always prepared for the next step. In trade systems far from Earth, alien merchants began speaking in hushed tones about the humans. "Have you heard about what they did to the Zephyr outpost?" one merchant asked, whispering over encrypted channels. "Entire fleet wiped out, and they didn't lose more than a handful of ships. They move faster than anyone can predict." Another replied, "It's more than just speed. They think like us, but faster, smarter. It's terrifying." These conversations, though informal, spread rapidly, building a reputation that humans had carefully cultivated through action rather than words. Humans also demonstrated diplomacy where it benefited them. They offered assistance to civilizations that showed willingness to cooperate, not through coercion, but through strategy. They sent messages of caution and reason, showing that they could be allies as well as a threat. Civilizations that had once mocked Earth now faced a choice: resist and face destruction, or align and survive. Humans did not demand loyalty. They inspired it through a combination of strength, intelligence, and calculated restraint. The balance of fear and respect was delicate, but humans managed it perfectly. In the corridors of human command centers, discussions focused on the next phase. Crews debriefed from simulations, analyzed alien responses, and refined tactics. Every member understood the stakes. The first strike had shown power. The second phase would show strategy and influence. Humans were not content with single victories. They aimed to shape the galaxy itself, preparing the stage for a future where Earth could never again be ignored or underestimated. Alien civilizations, meanwhile, were forced to confront uncomfortable truths. Plans that had worked for centuries were failing. Fleets that had been considered invincible were outmaneuvered. Even the most respected military leaders admitted privately that humans were unlike anything they had encountered. They were strong, yes, but more importantly, they were clever, adaptive, and unrelenting. The galaxy had assumed that humans could be contained, but now containment seemed impossible. Some alien species tried to unite in response. Conferences were held, fleets were merged, and strategies were coordinated across systems. But coordination was difficult. Many species had old rivalries, conflicting priorities, and fragile alliances. Humans had exploited this in their first strike, understanding that fear and uncertainty could divide even the strongest coalitions. The galaxy was beginning to see that humans were not just a military threat. They were a force that could alter the political and social balance of the entire galaxy. Back on Earth, humans observed these developments with quiet satisfaction. There was no arrogance, no desire to boast. They simply recorded the results, refined their strategies, and prepared for the future. Humans knew that patience and intelligence were more powerful than raw aggression. They had shown the galaxy what they could do, but they had also left room for understanding, adaptation, and negotiation. It was a careful balance that other species struggled to grasp. Stories of human resilience and strategy spread further than any military report. In one distant system, a historian wrote of humans who could face overwhelming odds and still prevail. In another, a young officer trained in fleet tactics debated with peers about the human ability to anticipate and counter every move. Even worlds that had never faced human forces began to change their policies, building defenses and reconsidering alliances. The humans' first strike had created a ripple effect that no one could contain. Within the human fleet, the mood was steady and focused. Crews practiced drills, repaired ships, and maintained communication with scouting parties. Leaders emphasized the importance of preparation, of continuous improvement. Each success was analyzed, not celebrated. Humans understood that fear alone could not secure long-term advantage. It had to be combined with discipline, intelligence, and unity. This approach set them apart from every other species in the galaxy, which often relied on pride, tradition, or brute force. By the end of this phase, one fact was clear across the galaxy. Humans were no longer to be ignored. Their first strike had shown their power, and their careful observation of the galaxy's reaction had shown their intelligence. Leaders everywhere understood that Earth had risen quietly, deliberately, and now they faced a species that was patient, clever, and prepared to shape the future according to its own terms. Fear had spread, respect had grown, and the galaxy had begun to realize that underestimating humans had been the gravest mistake of all. And as humans prepared for the next stage of their rise, they knew that the galaxy's reactions, fear, respect, hesitation, and confusion were as important as the fleets themselves. By observing and understanding the responses of other civilizations, humans had already begun to control the narrative of their rise. The galaxy was no longer a place of assumptions. It was a place of calculation, observation, and strategy. Exactly the kind of environment where humans thrived. The story of humanity's first strike and the galaxy's reaction became the beginning of a new chapter. No one could ignore Earth. No one could underestimate its people. And no one could predict exactly what would come next. The humans had proven themselves not just through force, but through intelligence, patience, and the ability to adapt. They had begun to shape the galaxy, and the galaxy had grown tense. After the first strikes and the ripple of fear that followed, leaders realized they could no longer wait or underestimate humanity. Reports of human fleets striking with precision, adaptability, and efficiency had spread to the farthest systems. Entire civilizations, once confident in their dominance, now spoke in whispers about Earth. Some called it a warning. Others called it a threat. But all agreed on one thing. The humans had proven themselves capable of things no other species could achieve. The galaxy's strongest fleets gathered for what they believed would be the decisive confrontation. Hundreds of ships from multiple species formed an immense armada, their combined firepower intended to crush Earth's forces once and for all. Alien commanders were confident. They had studied countless battles and tactics. They believed that sheer numbers, overwhelming firepower, and experience would easily defeat the humans. Some even laughed at the thought of Earth challenging them in a direct fight. "They may have surprised us before," one officer said, "but no species can match the combined might of the galaxy." Humans, however, had anticipated this moment. For months, they had studied the alliances forming against them, the fleets converging, and the likely strategies that would be employed. Every detail had been analyzed, every weakness identified, and every possible outcome simulated countless times. The human fleet that arrived to meet the armada was not larger in number, but it was smarter, faster, and more adaptable. Each ship was equipped to act independently, yet in perfect coordination with the others. Humans understood that adaptability in chaos was more valuable than raw numbers. As the fleets approached each other, space seemed to hold its breath. The alien armada stretched across hundreds of kilometers, a wall of firepower and metal, confident in its superiority. Humans moved quietly, their ships appearing like shadows in the void. Pilots monitored sensors, engineers adjusted power levels, and commanders gave precise orders. There was calm among the humans, a quiet confidence that came from preparation, practice, and trust. Unlike their opponents, who relied on arrogance and tradition, humans relied on intelligence, unity, and instinct. The first exchange of fire was like lightning across the dark expanse. Alien weapons fired in sweeping arcs, tearing through space. But humans were ready. Ships twisted, shifted, and darted through the onslaught, anticipating attacks in ways no simulation could have predicted. When they fired back, every shot was deliberate, aimed at critical systems rather than random destruction. Alien officers watched in disbelief as their best defenses were neutralized, not by superior firepower, but by human strategy. Ships were disabled, command centers targeted, and formations broken apart with precision. What shocked the galaxy most was not the damage humans inflicted, but how they adapted mid-battle. When one alien fleet tried a sudden flanking maneuver, humans countered instantly. Ships split into multiple groups, creating a dynamic web of movement that the aliens could not anticipate. When energy shields failed on one ship, backup systems engaged automatically, maintaining combat efficiency. Every challenge the aliens presented was met with an immediate solution, a calculated response that left the enemy struggling to react. The alien commanders realized, too late, that they were facing a species that could think several moves ahead. Humans predicted their patterns, exploited their overconfidence, and turned their strengths against them. Fleets that had considered themselves invincible were caught in traps they could not see, struck from angles they never anticipated. Each victory was precise, each movement purposeful. Humans had turned the chaos of battle into an environment where they thrived, while their opponents faltered under confusion and fear. Despite the overwhelming power arrayed against them, humans remained disciplined. There was no panic, no reckless heroics. Pilots communicated with clarity, sharing information instantly across the fleet. Engineers repaired minor damage without halting operations. Commanders coordinated strategies with focus and calm. Every human on every ship understood the role they played, and every role was executed flawlessly. Alien forces, in contrast, were hindered by poor coordination, hesitation, and internal conflict. Their numerical advantage was meaningless against human intelligence and preparation. One maneuver in particular became legendary. When a massive alien battleship attempted a full frontal assault on the human center, a group of smaller human ships intercepted it from multiple directions. They struck its engines, disrupted its navigation systems, and forced it into a position where it could no longer support the rest of the fleet. Meanwhile, heavier human cruisers targeted command modules, neutralizing leadership and leaving the enemy disorganized. The alien officers could only watch as the ship they had considered unstoppable became a liability in their formation dot as the battle raged. Humans demonstrated not just combat skill, but psychological mastery. They communicated with alien commanders, offering warnings and choices that forced hesitation. Some alien systems, seeing the precision and discipline of the human fleet, paused in fear. Others hesitated, unsure whether to commit fully, fearing total annihilation. Humans exploited these moments with surgical efficiency, striking at vulnerable points and breaking enemy cohesion. By combining force with intellect, humans controlled the battlefield in ways no other species had ever attempted. The turning point of the battle came when humans executed a maneuver that seemed impossible to their enemies. Entire squadrons of alien ships were funneled into narrow regions of space, where human firepower could strike simultaneously from multiple angles. Alien fleets, unable to break formation or retreat effectively, were decimated. Communications between their ships became chaotic, orders were delayed, and morale plummeted. Humans, in contrast, remained calm and coordinated, taking advantage of every opening with precision. By the end of the engagement, entire fleets that had once been considered formidable were shattered, their losses catastrophic. Alien leaders who survived the encounter struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. They had relied on numbers, experience, and technology, yet none of these had been enough. Humans had proven that intelligence, adaptability, and coordination could outweigh even the greatest firepower. Stories of the battle spread quickly, carried across colonies, systems, and distant star clusters. Humans were no longer just a threat. They were a force that had changed the rules of engagement across the galaxy. Even in victory, humans showed restraint where it mattered. Non-combatant systems were left untouched, refugees were allowed to escape, and opportunities for negotiation were presented. They had demonstrated power, but they had also demonstrated wisdom. This balance of strength and judgment further unnerved the galaxy. Other species had expected either brute force or reckless aggression. Humans offered neither. They offered controlled, intelligent, and decisive action. Within human command centers, the mood was focused but measured. Leaders debriefed crews, analyzed the outcomes, and refined strategies for future engagements. Every lesson was learned, every success recorded, and every error, however small, corrected. Humans understood that a single victory did not guarantee future dominance. Continuous learning, adaptability, and preparation were essential. This philosophy, combined with courage and intelligence, set humans apart from every other species. In the galaxy. Across the galaxy, fear and respect spread. Even civilizations that had never faced humans directly began reconsidering their policies, defenses, and alliances. The turning point battle had proven that humans were not just strong, they were unpredictable, intelligent, and unrelenting. Leaders who had doubted Earth's potential now debated in secret how to respond to a species that had already demonstrated the ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and overwhelm their most experienced fleets. Stories of human strategy and bravery reached far corners of space. Officers studied human tactics, attempting to learn from them. Yet even experts admitted they could not fully predict human behavior. Humans had turned adaptability into an art, a weapon as powerful as lasers or missiles. Their ability to act decisively under pressure, to anticipate enemy moves, and to remain coordinated amid chaos became the stuff of legend. Even those who had once mocked Earth could not ignore the rising reality. Humanity had arrived. The turning point battle left a lasting impression on the galaxy. Humans had proven that patience, preparation, and intelligence could defeat even the most formidable forces. Fleets that had believed themselves invincible were humbled. Leaders who had relied on tradition and numbers realized that they faced a species that operated on a level entirely different from anything they had encountered. The rules of engagement had changed, and humans were leading the shift. And as the human fleet regrouped after the battle, repairs underway and strategy sessions in motion, one fact was undeniable: the galaxy would never underestimate humanity. Again, the turning point was not only a victory in battle, it was a revelation. Humans had shown that they could rise against impossible odds, adapt faster than anyone, and achieve what others considered impossible. They had changed the perception of their species forever. From that moment on, every corner of the galaxy understood one simple truth: humans were no longer a species to ignore. They were a force of strategy, intelligence, and determina. The galaxy was no longer the same. The turning point battle had changed everything. Humans had proven that they were not only capable of defending themselves, but of striking with precision, strategy, an intelligence that no one had predicted. Entire fleets had been broken, key systems had been disabled, and the leaders who had once dismissed Earth were now scrambling to respond. Stories of the human fleet spread quickly, traveling faster than any message or signal. Across distant star systems, civilizations whispered of humans with a mixture of fear, respect, and awe. It began with military reports. Officers described fleets that moved faster than expected, ships that adapted in real time, and strategies that seemed to anticipate every possible move. Humans were not simply fighting. They were thinking, observing, and learning in the middle of battle. They combined discipline with creativity, turning chaos into an advantage while their enemies struggled to coordinate. The reports alone caused widespread panic. Many commanders wondered if their entire approach to warfare needed to change. Alien leaders met in secret councils, their discussions tense and urgent. Some called for immediate counterattack, believing that swift retaliation was the only way to stop humanity's rise. Others urged caution, fearing that a misstep would play into human strategy. For the first time, no one could predict what humans might do next. Their intelligence, discipline, and unpredictability made them a dangerous unknown, a force that could not be measured simply by numbers or firepower. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, and now it was paying the price. Fear spread, not only among leaders, but among ordinary citizens as well. Merchants in distant systems paused their trades, wondering if Earth's forces would reach them next. Scientists who had studied alien technology reconsidered their theories, realizing that human adaptability might surpass even the most advanced designs. News of the humans' precision and efficiency became the subject of debate, speculation, and rumor. Some spoke of humans as nearly mythical beings, capable of accomplishing what no one else could. These stories traveled faster than fleets ever could, spreading both dread and fascination. Humans, however, remained focused and grounded. There was no celebration over the fear they inspired, no arrogance or recklessness. Crews continued their drills, engineers refined their ships, and commanders analyzed every report. They understood that fear alone was not enough to secure long-term success. Intelligence, discipline, and preparation were just as important. Humans had shown power, yes, but they also demonstrated wisdom, restraint, and strategy. This combination made them unique and dangerous, and it ensured that the galaxy would take notice for years to come. Some alien worlds began to change their behavior entirely. They strengthened defenses, revised strategies, and even considered alliances with species they had once viewed as enemies. Humanity's rise had forced the galaxy to rethink long-held assumptions. Diplomacy, trade, and military policy were all affected. Those who had once laughed at Earth now worked tirelessly to understand it, seeking any advantage in a galaxy that was suddenly full of uncertainty. Humans had not only won battles, they had changed the mindset of countless civilizations. Legends of human skill and bravery grew. Stories circulated of individual ships facing impossible odds and surviving, of commanders making decisions that saved entire fleets, and of ordinary humans showing courage that inspired others. These accounts, though sometimes exaggerated, became part of the growing mythology of humanity. Even species that had never fought humans began to speak of them with respect and caution. The galaxy had always feared powerful invaders, but humans were different. They were not only powerful, they were clever, adaptable, and relentless. Humans themselves continued to demonstrate intelligence beyond the battlefield. They reached out diplomatically to those willing to cooperate, offering assistance, trade, and alliances. But they were not naive. They also showed strength where needed, making clear that resistance would be costly. This balance between power and diplomacy was carefully managed, and it further enhanced humanity's reputation. Civilizations that had once mocked Earth now saw it as a species that could lead, guide, and if necessary, punish. Humans had become both respected and feared, a combination that ensured their influence would grow steadily in remote systems. Scholars and strategists began studying humanity with fascination. They analyzed past battles, training methods, and ship designs. They tried to understand how humans could combine discipline, intelligence, and creativity so effectively. Some marveled at the speed with which humans adapted, noting that other species relied on rigid tactics that often failed in the face of innovation. Others observed the patience of humans, their willingness to prepare meticulously and strike at exactly the right moment. Across the galaxy, humans were no longer considered ordinary. They were exceptional. Fear and admiration worked together to build humanity's legend. Aliens who once laughed at Earth were now hesitant to engage humans, even in minor conflicts. Trade negotiations were approached with caution. Diplomatic decisions were reconsidered, and military planning shifted entirely. Humans had not only demonstrated their strength, they had made the galaxy aware that underestimating them could be disastrous. The ripple effects of their first strikes and turning point battles were reshaping the political, social, and military landscape. Even within human command centers, there was awareness of the growing myth. Crews shared stories of bravery and clever maneuvers, not to boast, but to learn from each other. Lessons from past battles were studied carefully, refined, and applied to simulations of future engagements. Humans understood that reputation was only as strong as continued performance. Fear and respect could be maintained, but only if humans continued to act with intelligence, discipline, and decisiveness. Every human involved knew their role in shaping the legend of their species. As the galaxy adjusted, humans continued to expand their influence subtly. Scouts monitored alien systems, observing how civilizations reacted, noting weaknesses, and identifying potential allies. Humans did not strike blindly. They acted only when necessary, preferring strategy over aggression. Even in the midst of rising fear, humans presented themselves as a force that could be reasoned with, trusted when appropriate, and feared when provoked. This careful balance further enhanced their growing legend. In some distant colonies, alien historians began recording the events, writing about humanity in ways that would be remembered for generations. They described humans as unpredictable yet disciplined, patient yet decisive, clever yet courageous. These accounts painted a picture of a species that was unlike any other, a species that had risen quietly, strategically, and with purpose. For the first time, the galaxy acknowledged that humans had changed the rules of engagement. They were no longer just another species. They were a defining force. Humans also demonstrated remarkable resilience during this period. Minor skirmishes were met with adaptability and calm. Logistical challenges were overcome with ingenuity, and diplomatic negotiations were handled with intelligence. Every success reinforced the growing reputation of humanity as a species that could survive, adapt, and thrive no matter the challenge. Stories of human endurance and cleverness spread alongside accounts of their battlefield victories. The legend of humanity was not built on fear alone. It was built on intelligence, courage, and resilience. Alien leaders now faced a difficult reality. They could attempt to resist humanity, but the risk of failure was high. They could attempt to form alliances, but the humans had already demonstrated their ability to exploit hesitation and indecision. They could ignore the rising power of Earth, but that was no longer an option. Humans had proven themselves capable of reshaping the galaxy, and every system had to reconsider its position. The galaxy had begun to realize that humanity was not just strong, they were extraordinary. Across every sector, whispers of humans as a near mythical force circulated. Young officers studied the human tactics, trying to learn from them. Merchants and traders reconsidered old agreements in fear of human intervention. Scientists speculated about human ingenuity, and even ordinary citizens began to share stories of courage and intelligence. Humans had become a subject of fascination, fear, and respect, a combination that solidified their influence in ways that went far beyond military might. As humans prepared for the next phase of their rise, they remained focused on their mission. There was no arrogance, no rush to prove dominance unnecessarily. Every action was calculated, every move intentional. They understood that the galaxy's growing fear and respect were assets, but they could only be maintained if humans continued to act with intelligence, discipline, and restraint. Legends could be built, but they could also be lost. Humans were determined to ensure that their story would endure. By the end of this period, one fact was undeniable. Humans had become a force that the galaxy could not ignore. Their first strikes and the turning point battles had created fear, but it was fear paired with respect. Alien civilizations had begun to reconsider alliances, strategies, and defenses. They understood that underestimating humans could be catastrophic, and that humanity had changed the way the galaxy would think about power, strategy, and survival. The rise of humanity had entered AN. The galaxy had changed forever. After months of carefully planned strikes, brilliant maneuvers, and strategic demonstrations of power, humans had risen from a species once dismissed as insignificant to a force that could no longer be ignored. The fleets that had laughed at Earth, the leaders who had underestimated them, and the civilizations that had assumed superiority now faced a reality that none could deny. Humanity had arrived, and it had arrived with intelligence, courage, and precision that left the galaxy in awe. The final phase of humanity's rise was not about reckless conquest or needless destruction. It was about establishing presence, proving capability, and shaping the future. Humans moved deliberately, never wasting resources or underestimating the importance of timing. Their fleets, now legendary across multiple systems, operated with precision that other species had never witnessed. Every movement was calculated, every strike purposeful, and every engagement guided by careful observation and intelligence. The galaxy was watching, and humans knew exactly what to show. In the outer systems, alien leaders tried to resist the inevitable. They sent their best fleets, deployed the most advanced weapons, and coordinated attacks in hopes of halting humanity's rise. Yet humans met them not with panic or haste, but with planning, calm, and adaptability. Ships moved in, patterns that defied expectation. Strikes were made at points of critical importance, and defenses were neutralized with remarkable efficiency. Every engagement reinforced the growing reputation of humanity as a species that could think, adapt, and act faster than any other. One of the most decisive engagements occurred near a strategic cluster of star systems that had long been the heart of alien power. The humans approached cautiously, studying the enemy's formations and analyzing weaknesses. As the alien fleets moved to engage, humans executed maneuvers that had been tested in countless simulations. Ships split, regrouped, and struck with precision, targeting engines, communication hubs, and weapons simultaneously. The alien commanders, confident in their numbers, watched in disbelief as entire squadrons were disabled without giving humans more than minor losses. The battle demonstrated the true power of human strategy. Humans did not rely solely on firepower. They relied on intelligence, adaptability, and foresight. When an alien squadron attempted an unexpected maneuver, human ships anticipated the move, countering before the enemy could complete it. Every strike, every adjustment, and every response was calculated to maximize effect while minimizing risk. The aliens, despite their technology and numbers, could not keep up. The advantage humanity had built through patience, study, and discipline became unmistakable. As news of the engagement spread, the fear and respect for humanity reached its peak. Across the galaxy, Civilizations that had once doubted Earth began to reconsider their positions. Fleets that had been considered powerful were now hesitant, and leaders were forced to rethink their entire approach to diplomacy, trade, and defense. Humanity had not just proven military capability, they had reshaped the way the galaxy viewed power. Earth was no longer a backwater planet. It was a hub of intelligence, strategy, and unstoppable will. Humans also demonstrated restraint and wisdom, understanding that long-term influence required more than victory in battle. Civilian systems were left untouched, and opportunities for negotiation were extended. Humans were not conquerors by instinct. They were a species that valued knowledge, preparation, and justice. This approach further solidified their reputation. Aliens learned that humans could destroy with precision when necessary, but would also act fairly and strategically when it served mutual benefit. The combination of power and integrity made humans an unparalleled force. Within the human fleet, crews reflected on the journey. Every pilot, engineer, and commander had contributed to this rise. Years of preparation, training, and careful observation had culminated in this moment, and the results were extraordinary. Discussions focused not on past victories, but on future challenges. Humans knew that their rise was only just beginning, and that vigilance, intelligence, and adaptability would always be required. The confidence in the fleet was quiet, measured, and earned through action rather than words. The galaxy began to adapt to humanity's presence. Formerly hostile civilizations sent emissaries, seeking alliances or at least neutrality. Trade routes were reopened under careful negotiation, and diplomatic channels were filled with messages of cooperation and caution. Humans had demonstrated that they could protect their interests decisively while also offering collaboration when it benefited all. The influence of humanity extended far beyond fleets and battles. It was shaping politics, economics, and culture across multiple systems. Stories of human courage and intelligence continued to spread. Accounts of small crews performing miraculous feats, commanders making decisive choices under impossible pressure, and engineers repairing ships in the middle of battle became part of the growing legend. Even alien historians, reluctant to admit admiration, wrote about humans as a species that defied expectations. They had survived countless threats on their home planet, adapted to every challenge, and risen to dominate the galaxy not through arrogance, but through patience, intelligence, and unity. Fear remained a part of humanity's reputation, but it was tempered with respect. Civilizations had learned that underestimating humans was dangerous, yet humans were not mindless aggressors. They were disciplined, calculated, and focused. This balance made them unique in the galaxy. The legend of Earth's rise became a story of caution, intelligence, and inevitability, proof that patience and planning could achieve what brute strength alone never could. Humans also looked to the future. They continued to expand their presence strategically, establishing bases and fleets in key locations while avoiding unnecessary conflict. Every movement was deliberate, every decision informed by intelligence gathered from the galaxy itself. They were shaping a future where humanity could thrive, defend itself, and influence the wider galaxy without resorting to needless destruction. Their rise was not chaotic, it was methodical, calculated, and unstoppable. Meanwhile, alien civilizations adapted to the reality of humanity's strength. Fleets were restructured, strategies revised, and alliances reconsidered. Some species attempted to challenge humans, but the lessons of past battles made them cautious. Every confrontation had demonstrated that humans were not predictable. They were intelligent, adaptable, and relentless. To engage them without preparation was to risk disaster. Slowly, the galaxy began to acknowledge Earth as a central player in shaping the future of all civilizations. The culmination of humanity's rise was marked not by a single decisive victory, but by the recognition that the galaxy had changed. Humans had turned fear into respect, uncertainty into caution, and intelligence into influence. The story of their ascent became a defining chapter in galactic history. Entire civilizations recognized that Earth was no longer a planet to ignore. Humans had proven themselves capable, reliable, and extraordinarily adaptive. They had reshaped the rules of engagement and set a standard that no other species could match. Back on Earth, humans continued to prepare for the future. Technology was refined, fleets maintained, and crews trained. Every system was analyzed for potential threats and opportunities. Humans understood that the galaxy's recognition of their power did not guarantee peace or safety. It was a challenge to maintain, a responsibility that required constant vigilance. But there was also a quiet acknowledgement that their patience, intelligence, and courage had transformed the course of history. Legends of humanity grew not just through action, but through the perception of their discipline and adaptability. Aliens told tales of humans who could survive the impossible, outthink the clever, and overcome any obstacle. Fear and respect intertwined, creating a powerful narrative that ensured humanity's influence would endure. The galaxy had seen Earth rise from obscurity to prominence, and the memory of that transformation would shape every decision, every alliance, and every conflict for generations to come. And so, humanity solidified its position as a defining force in the galaxy. They had demonstrated the power of patience, intelligence, and unity. They had shown that adaptability and strategy could overcome even the greatest odds. They had earned fear, respect, and admiration in equal measure. The rise of humans was complete, not through brute force alone, but through vision, discipline, and courage. The galaxy had finally seen what it had always feared, and Earth stood at the center of a new era, ready to shape the future with the same intelligence and determination that had brought them this far. From that moment on, number civilization could doubt the power of humans. They were a species that had endured, adapted, and risen. They were a force capable of reshaping the galaxy, not only through battles, but through strategy, diplomacy, and wisdom. The story of humanity's rise would be told for generations. A story of patience, intelligence, and courage that transformed the galaxy forever.